I do feel like a lot of the decision making at MMWD seems to me to be piecemeal. One-off decisions. We have an opportunity. All in favor, aye. Let's build a $3 million pump station. All in favor, aye. Yeah, of course, we need a $3 million pump station. AMI, let's get the data. $25 million investment in AMI technology. What I haven't seen is really a deep analysis of exactly where we're going to get the return, where are the opportunities, and how can we look at this kind of investment in light of a full budget and a full plan, as Matt said in the beginning. We need to start with a plan, have a very clear set of goals, and then fit the budget to make that work. I'm a huge fan of advanced metering. One of my first companies that I backed in the sustainability fund that I started was called Banyan Water. We have water meters that we put into large real estate irrigation complexes around the country, mostly in Georgia, Texas, Southern California, Arizona, where water rates are much higher. Corporate campuses and large campuses, we've proven that you can have a 60% reduction in water use and a 18-month return on investment. Now, this is low-hanging fruit. I do not expect the AMI investment that the water district will have here will have that kind of return. But measuring, as Ranjiv said, measuring success, measuring the impact of these kinds of investments is critical. It helped. We get our savings, and what I hope we would be able to do at Marin is to get the savings from early leak detection, figure out where you can dedicate your resources to invest in infrastructure before it becomes problematic, and figure out where the waste is and how we can be efficient. So I'm a giant believer in this kind of technology, and I know that there will be future technologies that will be successful. That we should investigate and continue, as MMWD used to be, as an innovator, where I believe that we've stepped a little bit behind. But I want to map that innovation with real clear analytics and real clear understanding of how we're going to get the best bang for our buck, given all the other options we have out there. I think that the benefits are, as stated, to give us a real chance, a real shot at being independent. And not reliant on sources that we can't control, and there can be a long-term cost benefit also. I think when you look at other solutions, there definitely are some financial benefits to doing it. To put a finer tooth on the comb on the downside, it's a pretty enormous upfront cost. However, I don't believe that the Jacob study analysis of, whatever, $350+ million was one that I understood. It seemed much higher than what I've seen in the past. But still, it's a pretty big upfront cost. It's also expensive to run these things. So, cost of rain is not that expensive. It's $300 an acre foot, and this is going to be more in the $3,000 an acre foot. So it's expensive to run it, labor intensive, and you have to keep it going. It also takes an enormous amount of energy. So if we think climate change is the problem, the amount of CO2 emissions coming from running these plants is enormous. And then, as they said, the brine and how you handle the waste. So there are a lot of downsides. The only other one that I think is going to be really tough for us is that this is probably the most polarizing issue in our county. I mean, the political will, the people that I've talked to and some on this call here, it's like desal is the only answer. And if you don't do it, you got, come on, you're out of it. And I get the absolute other side. I mean, I got people that are like, no chance, not going to happen. We'll picket the streets. And so it is a massively polarizing issue. And what I hope to do is just get the tenor down a little bit, try to get to the real issues and bring people together to kind of come up with answers, as opposed to pointing fingers, and help people take their stakes out of the ground. I think the solutions are going to come from multiple places. I don't think there's a one-stop shop solution for everything. And if we take a short, medium, and long-term perspective on our water supply issues, then I think the solutions will become clearer. In the short term, an emergency insurance plan is not going to be desal. We're not going to build a desal plant in the next year. But we need to do some work in the next year. We need to do some really clear work to make sure we don't run out of water again like we did last year. So there's some immediate emergency work that has to happen. And then we have a medium-term plan, and I'm thinking that's more like 8 to 10 years. And that's where our goal and our goal setting and planning needs to come into play. So right now, the way I'm thinking about this, and this is the first time I'm testing it, is I want to see 2,000 acre feet in the next 2 years. And there are a lot of different ways we can get it. And I want to see 10,000 acre feet of water supply in the next 10 years. And how, if we have a goal like that, how can we then back into the sources and where we're going to come from? It could come from savings. It could come from recycled water. And it could come from partnering either in a regional desal basis or others. But once you have a plan in place like that, then we can bring together all the different solutions. And frankly, I think we need a 40-year plan. We need a long-term plan, and we need to start saving, because we're not saving right now. Our financial structure is such that we're taking on debt in order to pay for our current operating shortfalls. And there's some real concerns that I have about how we map the short, medium, and long-term plan into a financial model that works, given what drought has thrown our way. The relationship with Sonoma is critical for us. It's a big chunk of our water supply, and it does not feel like it's the most secure relationship. Larry Russell, Jack Gibson have had a lock on those conversations for a long time. And the sense that I get is that the political tenor coming out of Sonoma is not one of love for us. However, I do think they do appreciate our revenues. And we do provide some pretty important benefits. In talking with Jared Huffman and Stephanie Moulton-Peters last week, I do believe there's an opportunity for me and potentially all three of us to get involved in those conversations, to shift the dialogue around us taking from them. But how can we have a more regional approach? And I think we should. I think that water does, as I think Matt said earlier, go across jurisdictions, and these lines that were drawn were not taken into account of watershed. And some of the low-hanging fruit, in talking with Ben Hornstein, actually does come from a partnership that we can expand with Novato, that we probably can work with Stafford Lake, which gets 100% of their water from Sonoma. And we can work with either pipeline access or get access to store water in our district, and have a pipeline that connects with Sonoma and Novato and us. That seems to be something that actually will happen. And I think that could be helpful. It's not the one cure-all solution, but that can be helpful. And if we can expand the relationship with Sonoma, with the winter water that they have coming through the Russian River, with access to their reservoir capacity, I think that we can share capacity in a way that's pretty innovative and make that a more regional one water approach. But once again, I think it was Matt that said that earlier, we're still reliant on rain. This is not a drought-proof concept. So these relationships are critical. They're critical right now. I hope to strengthen them and not run away from them. I hope to bring goodwill to both our community and theirs. And in a way, if we can invest in them, then I think that we will benefit, and we can make them more solid. But the ways that we can find independence, and I think most likely the answer will be reinvigorating the innovative leadership that we had and bringing recycling where we had it in Las Colinas, and we're seeing it in Los Gatos, and we're seeing it in other places around California, reinvigorating our community where we can invest now in these projects. And I think 30 of them have been identified around our county, both in golf courses and San Quentin, potentially. There are many places where we can start the investment in recycled water. We can retake our leadership and become increasingly water independent. So I look forward to pushing that. You know, I'm not walking away from the partnerships that we have up there. I think they're too critical, Steve. So the first question about desal is how we would look at regional approach versus a localized our own approach. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then piping it across the bridge. I don't have a strong opinion on how Antioch could be helpful for us. I think that we've already proven that East Bay Mud is not necessarily a big fan of helping us solve our problems. They spent $1 billion over 30 years solving their problems, and now they're saying, okay, you guys over, you rich folks over in Marin are trying to come over and leverage that. But I do think that there are better opportunities for us in DeSal, either in the Petaluma River area, that could be interesting. But I once again, I feel like that's a long-term plan, and I'm not convinced that the technology in the short term is going to get us there. But I'm open to looking at that. I think that that's going to take some time to get through. I do think that on the golf course front, there are ways that you can actually use recycled water in multiple areas. I know Meadow Club is looking at it, and I talked to the head of their committee who's looking at doing a $10 million investment to bring water up to them. And I think we can partner with Meadow Club to do that. And similar at Peacock Gap, there's an opportunity for us to use recycled water to help with them. And I think there's an opportunity for us to potentially do that over by San Quentin and with the development that the state is doing over there, which is, I think, is a couple thousand units. There are ways that actually you can have recycled water and desal combined together, and you can kind of leverage the infrastructure that they could have near each other where it could be helpful. Because building, multiple pipelines to go through to satisfy it would be expensive. But I have not seen a proposal for the right location for us that gives us the best bang for the buck at this point.
So that begs the question of tapping into the Antioch approach.
I think that could be potentially helpful as a emergency solution to get some amount of water that we might need. That would once again bring a pipeline across the bridge and bring a pretty expensive investment. And I think there are better ways to have an emergency resiliency plan than that. I definitely heard quotes that like, hey, the MMWD has squeezed enough out of us. They can't squeeze any more water out of us. We've done is too much. It's too painful. And I understand the perspective. And I think the vast majority of our citizens have been fantastic. I think people have recognized the importance of saving water. 75% of our community is in tier 1. Tier 1's a pretty broad range. I think there's a chance we could probably actually separate tier 1 into 2 tiers. But I actually, or another way to say it is, I think we could probably create a tier 5, and I have started looking into that because I got some data just the other day from a good friend who was involved with some of the citizens group in MMWD about 10 years ago, that the top 100 households in Tiburon use on average 4,000 gallons a day. And the top 1,000 in that area use on average 750 gallons of water per day. So to say that we've squeezed enough out of our community, to me, doesn't totally jive. I think that there's still some communication and some reset that we need to have, that waste is happening. Most people, let's call it 75% who are in tier 1, are doing an absolutely fantastic job. And there's definitely some more room to grow and to improve. And I think that can be helpful. It won't solve the problem. It's not going to be the only answer. We need to have a multi-tiered answer. And some of the sources that we've talked about, both increasing storage and increasing supply from other areas. But it is a critical part of how we will get through this, is educating people about the impact of their decisions. And it's something that I've done for years in my companies that have been involved in sustainable focused products that help people understand the importance of using organics, of not using chemicals in your laundry detergents and putting on your countertops and on your skin, to saving energy so you can reduce carbon emissions. You can make decisions that can be helpful for the community, save money, and be beneficial. And I think with the right communication plan, conservation can turn from being what seems to be a negative right now to being a positive. And it doesn't have to be for everybody, but I think we can continue to do better. Laying down purple pipe, if we could almost talk about it like we've talked about desal, there's pluses and minuses. The pluses are are quite astonishing. The positive impact in many ways for the environment is large. The ability for us to be self-reliant is important. Countries all around the world are recycling water in a fantastic way. We don't have the culture here, and we can rebuild it, and we can rebuild it piecemeal over time. Some of the drawbacks are it is expensive to lay down more infrastructure into the streets, and we're already way behind. We have hundreds of millions of dollars in backlogged infrastructure that we need to catch up on. And it is costly. It's more expensive than some of the other solutions that are out there. But I think we got to start now, and it will be one of the things that I promote pretty heavily. We need to start reinvigorating our investment. We need to bring in an innovative view about how to go about it. We were innovators in the 80s when we put it in Las Colinas, and I think we should be doing it again now. It's about diversifying our portfolio so that we're not completely just reliant on Sonoma and on rain. And I look forward to partnering with folks like Steve Moore and others who are thought leaders about this. Communication is going to be critical for success in our job and getting in the seat here. And I hope it's going to be a positive message. I hope that we can help people understand the impact that they can have, that as a community, we can rise together. As a community, we can help make a difference. And then it's going to take all of us. It's not one person or one board member or this board. It's everybody together. And a good organization, a well-run organization, is a listening organization. It's one where you take the feedback. You don't think that you have all the answers, and then you try to coalesce it and drive together. And if it's done right, then leadership and management becomes natural as opposed to forced, where there's silos of communication and things aren't shared and good ideas are not bubbled to the top. I think specifically, MMWD has a communications issue for a number of reasons. One is they lost their head of marketing, their head of communications about a year ago. And that's a sign that that person left because of disagreements with other people internally, but also because it does not seem to be the best atmosphere internally for folks. And now we have actually several dozen open seats. I think the culture inside the organization needs to be revitalized. And the marketing side of it is a classic one. I gather we had a pretty strong person in the seat who did not want to work there anymore. So we need some leadership here where we build a listening organization, not to our community, but to our staff, because the skills are there and can be there. And I think we can bring them in. I think we can use the bill to be the primary communication mechanism. The website's good and it can be better. But the bill is where we can really articulate why we have certain fixed costs, that we're not just here to deliver drips of water to your faucet, but we have 2 million people using the watershed, and we have rangers that are taking care of it. And we have 5 endangered species and 400 plants and fauna. We have hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure pipeline. So it's not just a direct variable cost that is driving the financial structure here. There's a lot of fixed costs that are important that are a part of it. So I think there are multiple ways we can go about it. Specifically to your question about rationing, I mean, rationing is pretty clear, and this organization is not doing it. Rationing says you only get a specific amount of, in this case, it would be water or any commodity, and that's it. And so rationing is not happening. And I don't see it happening, and hopefully we'll avoid it from happening. There are places in Southern California where they're turning folks off, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that does not happen here. I'm not sure why it was difficult for her to answer that question. It's not a difficult question to answer. Fortunately, it's not our job to decide whether we have housing or not and where the housing goes. That's a state mandate, and that's being heavily contested in different municipalities and embraced by others. Our job is to supply water to people in our community, and so that the extra use that will come with such housing will be our job to make sure that we get water to those people. There are some new construction policies that I would be in favor of that can increase, but either whether it's gray water use or storage or stormwater capture or the kind of housing that's being built, that I believe would make that 10% impact on our water supply needs less. think we have 7 dams on Lagunitas Creek, and our reservoirs are not sufficient to satisfy our needs. The pushback the sense that I get is that increasing our capacity here is going to be difficult. But as Ranjiv said, I want to dig into that. I'm not willing to say that we can't, and I'm not willing to say that we can come up with alternative creative solutions to increase our capacity in a way that is not harmful for fish and wildlife and for the environment. So I look forward to digging into what the real pushback would be from the state. But the sense that I get, and this has been talking with Jared and some other folks, is that it's going to be really, really difficult for us in Marin to increase the capacity significantly. Maybe spill water gates, but that's not going to help a ton. I do think, though, however, that as you talked about up in Jenner, I do think that the Russian River winter water is a significant opportunity for us, because that is just flowing straight out. And their watershed is significantly bigger than ours. I think it's like 4 or 5 times larger than us. So the opportunity to catch the storm that's coming through, to catch that torrential rain that happens, is bigger by having a stronger partnership with them up there. And there are opportunities for us to expand our storage access by capturing winter rains through the Russian River watershed. And so I like I said, I'll lock arms with anyone I can to help make sure that we can partner and take advantage of that. I am not seeing right now, and what we need to make any of these decisions is a very clear plan. We need a financial plan that's forward-looking. We need a supply plan that handles the needs of our community, whether it's housing or others. We need a use plan, and right now I do not see that. I see more piecemeal decision making, and so without that clear target, short, medium, and long term, it's very hard to think ahead. So I would step back. In the first 100 days, we have an opportunity to rebuild a listening organization, to one that brings, as Ranjiv said, members of our community together. The last company that I was CEO of had about the same number of people, it was about 250 people. And I did lunch with Jed with every single person in the organization. We did 10-person lunches, and I went around the table and I said, what's keeping you up at night and how can I help? Who are you? What do you do? But I learned from those 25 lunches what the issues were, where the strengths and weaknesses in the organization were, and where the solutions needed to come out of. And I came out of that with a very, very clear strategy. The ideas are out there. We already probably have them inside our community and inside the organization. We just need the political will to go make it happen. And there's going to be some difficult decisions that are going to be made. I think when the 3 of us are in the seat, we're prepared to take it on the chin, because we know that there's going to be some people that don't like every decision that has to get made. But right now we're too stuck, that the inertia has got us into a bit of a rough place. As Matt said, the core key decisions that are going to become apparent will revolve around the recreation plan and the rate structure. And there's been some political timid approaches to both of those over time, and I think that I believe that the 3 of us will have an opportunity to make a difference